Good day. Today I will be discussing about the history of anesthesiology. Introduction. Anesthesiology describes the field of interventions that bring about temporary and controlled physiological states that are characterized by the loss of sensation and awareness as well as prevention and or relief of pain. It is the state of anesthesia is induced via the administration of gases or injectable drugs before surgical operations or other medical interventions. So, anesthesia is intended to induce some or all of the following effects: analgesia, relief from or prevention of pain; paralysis, it is adequate muscle relaxation; amnesia, it is the loss of awareness and or memory of pain experience; hypnosis, it is a temporary unconsciousness or absence of anxiety. So, William Thomas Green Morton was born August 9, 1819, Charlton, Massachusetts, U.S., and died July 15, 1868, New York. It is an American dental surgeon who in 1846 gave the first successful public demonstration of ether anesthesia during surgery. He is credited with gaining the medical world's acceptance of surgical anesthesia. He found that when he inhaled sulfuric ether, he became unresponsive. A few months after this discovery, on October 16, 1836, Morton successfully anesthetized a patient at Massachusetts General Hospital, located in Boston, USA. A surgeon then removed a tumor of the left jaw while the patient remains unconscious. This highly significant discovery cleared the way for the development of many interventions of modern medicine. Sir James Young Sampson, 1st Baronet, born June 7, 1811, Bathgate, Linlithgowshire, Scott, died May 6, 1870, London, Scottish obstetrician who was the first to use chloroform in obstetrics and the first in Britain to use ether. So James Simpson, a Scottish obstetrician, started using chloroform, a volatile general anesthetic, particularly to alleviate pain during childbirth. But there were risks associated with the use of these drugs because ether was highly flammable. It could not be used with electrocautery. The use of chloroform was associated with high death rates from cardiac arrest. Today, sulfuric ether and chloroform have been replaced by much safer and more effective agents like sevoflurane and isoflurane. The practice of general anesthesia has evolved to become one of the safest of all routine major medical procedures. So here are the timelines of the history of anesthesia. So in the year 400 BCE, 20, the events is the use of opium poppy, herbal remedies using hyoscyamus niger, mandragora, and aconitum acupuncture performed with bones, cannabis vapors, and carotid compression is documented in records from ancient China, Greece, Egypt, and beyond. 0 to 1. 1800s. The events here are the herbal mixtures of opium, mandrake, henbane, and or hemlock boiled in wine along with coca leaves are used in ancient Greece, Rome, and the Incan Empire. Ether, diethyl ether, and injectable opium are used in Germany. Oxygen and nitrous oxide are discovered in England. 1800s to 1850. 1800s, Humphrey Davy observes that nitrous oxide relieves physical pain. In 1805, Frederick Sertner isolates morphine from opium. 1824, Henry Hill Heckman describes the use of carbon dioxide as a means of anesthesia for animals. 1842, William Clark etherizes a patient for dental extraction. 1845, Horace Wells inhales nitrous oxide as anesthesia for his own dental extraction. 1846, William Morton becomes the first to publicly and successfully demonstrate the use of ether anesthesia for surgery. In 1847, James Simpson administers chloroform for pain during childbirth. 1850 to 1900s. 1853, Charles Provaz and Alexander Wood invent the hollow hypodermic needle and attach it to an earlier invention to create the syringe. 1853 and 1857, John Snow popularizes obstetric anesthesia by using chloroform during Queen Victoria's births of Prince Leopold and Princess Beatrice. 1863, Quincy Colton reintroduces nitrous oxide as an inhalation anesthetic. 1868, Edmond Andrest proposes mixing nitrous oxide and oxygen as an anesthetic. 1884, Carl Koller introduces cocaine as an ophthalmic anesthetic. 1889, Henry Dorr becomes the first professor of anesthesiology. 1891, the world's first anesthesia journal, the Dental and Surgical Microcosm, is published. 1893, the world's first society of anesthesiology is formed in London. 1894, Armory, Codeman, and Harvey Cushing developed the first anesthesia, recordings of respiratory and pulse rates. 1898, August Bayer conducts the first spinal block using cocaine. He goes on to create the Bayer block. So, in 1900s to 1925, in 1901, caudal epidural analgesia is described. 1902, the words anesthesiology and anesthesiologists are coined. 1905, the first professional anesthesia society in the United States is founded. 1914, the USA's first comprehensive textbook of anesthesia is published. 1920, Arthur Goodell publishes his observation on ether anesthesia, including eye signs, in the American Journal of Surgery. These findings are still used today. 1923, Isabella Herb administers the first ethylene oxygen surgical anesthetic. In 1925 to 1950, 1927, Ralph M. Water trains the first anesthesia residency class at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. 1929, John S. Landy popularizes the use of the intravenous anesthetic thiopental pentothal. 1935, Emery A. Robinstein is an early leader of the American Society of Anesthetists, which later becomes the American Society of Anesthesiology, or the ASEA. 1937, Robert R. McIntosh introduces his curved laryngoscope. In 1940, the American Board of Anesthesiology is granted independent board status. In 1942, the world's first successful anesthetic use of muscle relaxant is recorded. In 1944, lidocaine is introduced as a local anesthetic. In 1950-1975, in 1953, Virginia Apgar creates and publishes the Apgar score to assess the health of newborns. In 1954, perioperative mortality related to anesthesia begins to be recorded. In 1956, Michael Johnstone clinically introduces halothane, the first modern-day brominated general anesthetic. In 1958, John W. Searinghouse develops a complete gas apparatus. 1960, Joseph Artusho begins human trials of the inhalational anesthetic methoxyflurane. In 1963, Edmond I. Eger II describes minimum alveolar concentration, the MAC. In 1964, Conter Corsine begins human trials of the dissociative intravenous anesthetic ketamine. In 1966, Robert Virtue begins human trials of the inhalation anesthetic enflurane. In 1972, the inhalational anesthetic isoflurane is introduced into clinical practice. So during 1975 to 2000, on 1986, the ASA approves a standard of care for intraoperative anesthesia monitoring. In 1992, the inhalational anesthetic desflurane is introduced into clinical practice. In 1993, a safe and systematic approach to ventilation during general anesthesia is established. In 1994, the inhalation anesthetic sevoflurane is introduced into clinical practice. So 2000 to present. The ESA establishes a Simulation Education Network, or the SEN, to continue educating and certify anesthesiologists. The end.